Lehmann, the D.C. bureau chief of The Nation magazine, thenation.com. Lehmann Chris, Lehmann Chris is his Twitter handle, or at The Nation. Chris, welcome to the program. You've written about Ron DeSantis' stunt sending asylum seekers to Martha's Vineyard. This piece over at The Nation, DeSantis' contempt for immigrants makes him politically stupid. Are you certain that this thing is going to backfire or is backfiring on DeSantis?
Thanks, first of all, Tom, for having me. Great pleasure to be here. The short answer is no, I'm not certain. And in part, I think my argument and the headline there are an exercise in sort of prayerful wishing.
Well, I'm with you on that.
Backfire, because as anyone who's been following our politics over the last 6 years knows there is no apparent bottom to the depravity of the Republican Party, and that is DeSantis's own calculation in pulling this stunt. Is he's obviously seeking to make a name for himself in the 2024 presidential field as the greatest hardliner on immigration. But there are reasons, perhaps to hope that it will backfire. As my sources point out in the piece, the stunt creates a state of potential legal jeopardy for DeSantis. It seems a pretty straightforward.
Which he may love.
Well, depending. The legal jeopardy isn't going so well for, maximum leader Trump right now. So, and I think, it would be, this is a different thing than, the kind of standard Trump demagoguing on immigration, which targets, these kind of shadowy evildoers and caravans at the border. Right. This is going after people who are already in the country legally, which is a very important point. Right. They're seeking asylum. Moreover, they're seeking asylum from a left-leaning autocracy in Venezuela, where DeSantis has already a significant Venezuelan immigrant constituency in Florida. Right. And this isn't really playing well with them or the large Cuban immigrant community in Florida. Right. I think he is making the calculation that he can take the hit in his home state and survive, the challenge from Charlie Crist for the government.
So I'm looking at a couple of dynamics here. One is that there are now, by some estimates, 300 radio stations in the nation that are broadcasting in Spanish that have the equivalent of Rush Limbaugh on the air, only Spanish language versions. They are flipping Hispanics hard right. And principally using anti-black racism and anti-abortion Catholicism as the levers to do that, number one. Number two, I'm looking at Ralph Reed's Faith and Freedom Coalition. Their leader, Timothy Head, just announced that they are spending $42 million in this election cycle. They are knocking on 8.2 million doors in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Iowa, Texas, Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, and California. And their principal message is to Hispanic. This is entirely to a Hispanic audience that they are targeting. And they're trying to recruit these Latino evangelicals by appealing to anti-LGBTQ and anti-abortion sentiments within that demographic. They have already distributed 43 million Christian voter guides among the Hispanic population. This is the population in which the Protestant evangelical movement is most rapidly growing in the United States, and it is openly aligned with the GOP. They have they're running more than 33 million video ads that are going up online as we speak. And they're they've got a database of 46 million voters, and they're entirely focusing on U.S. Senate races and governorships. I'm not so certain that Ron DeSantis is hurting himself with this. And in fact, it's looking to me like the Republican Party is having some significant victories with some major allies in going after the Hispanic vote in particular.
Well, though I think it's worth noting a couple of things. There was a lot of punditry in the wake of the 2022 election that the Hispanic vote was tilting rightward, and it did, Donald Trump did draw a bigger than expected Hispanic vote, but it turned out on re-examination that a lot, the Rio Grande Valley in Texas was sort of the epicenter of all this speculation. And it turned out that that was kind of a mirage. And I think, yeah, you're right. Obviously, it's been true for a very long time that Hispanic immigrant communities, especially the Cuban American community in Florida, tilt very right and on religious and cultural issues in particular. But this isn't something that, fits that playbook. This is taking people, again, who are refugees from a left government in Venezuela and, treating them like, sadistically treating them like pawns, right, and entrapping them with false promises of jobs and benefits on the ground in Massachusetts. I think this is not in any way to downplay the massive outlays of cash and media buys that you just outlined. But, this isn't the traditional culture war fodder. This is actually,
right,
it's scrambling up what had been, going back to Reagan and even George W. Bush to some extent, a reliable Republican pitch to Latin American immigrants. That,
I'm sorry, finish your thought.
No, just that, we welcome you. This is a land of opportunity, classic sort of American civic religious kind of themes. And this is, basically saying, come to America at your hazard because we may entrap you and, hire a private jet to drop you in the middle of an island you know nothing about for a cynical political stunt.
When we look back, though, when you see George W. Bush using torture, actual torture, violating international law, American law, bringing people to the United States or to Gitmo and continuing torture without no due process whatsoever, violating every principle of Americanism all the way back to George Washington. It actually strengthened his support with the Republican base. When you look at Donald Trump tearing children away from their parents at the southern border and putting them in cages and building private prisons for immigrants, it strengthened his support with the Republican base. It horrified the rest of America in both cases, but it strengthened their support. Has there been any measurement yet, any kind of polling or anything like that that might indicate within Florida anyway how this might affect the outcome of the governor's election that's coming up this November?
Not that I've seen, no. I think, DeSantis did have a comfortable lead going into this. And I think, he was, banking on his being able to, lose some support in the immigrant community and, Charlie Crist.
So what does this tell us about how addicted the Republican Party is to brutality?
They are very much addicted to brutality. It goes back to the famous line from Atlantic columnist Adam Serwer that the cruelty is the point. They use power to dramatize, contempt, really, and to create a perception that others who are not white, who are not evangelical or cultural white nationalist conservatives are less than human. It is it does work with this hardcore base of the GOP. And, it could work for DeSantis too. As I said at the outset, I was, writing in a more hopeful tenor, which is unusual for me. But I do think, it's more than just the sort of what I see as, optics suggesting that the Republican Party is off on a sadistic binge of victimizing real human beings who are here, again, legally, seeking asylum, and it was also a miscalculation. This was obviously like akin to what an insult comic does when they're trying to antagonize a crowd and
yeah. Well, let's hope so. From your lips to God's ears. The article is "Will DeSantis' Contempt for Migrants Backfire?" ? By Chris Lehmann over at thenation.com. Chris, thanks for dropping by.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Great getting to know you. Thank you so much.